no matter what, you have to put yourself first. If you're not aware that there's change that needs to be made, how can you fix it? This information is fire.
I had to come to the realization that, number one, I was an emotional eater.
We need to accept the decisions that we make, because if we can do that, then we have the power to change them. You came here so that way you can start moving into your heaven path. Once again, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Welcome everybody. Appreciate you being here with me this evening. It's my first live since I was away, and I don't know. I just felt like I said, man, I need to go talk to my people. You know, I felt like you guys maybe missed me. Maybe you did. I don't know. I know you missed me. Just joking. But there was how can I say this? The Spirit laid something on my heart, and I just said, okay, I'll listen, because I didn't really prepare for this, so to speak. And when I made that live, I just was like, okay, I'll do it. And I still had other things I needed to do for the day. Some of the things I was supposed to do, I didn't get accomplished because I needed to put together this information so I can do this live. And I was just like, well, maybe I can do it tomorrow. And then I was like, nope, do it tonight. So I don't know, maybe somebody needed this. And if it gets one person, it makes more sense. There's more clarity. There's more understanding. My job is complete. So, let's see here. Let's take a look. Oh, you like the intro? Awesome. Thank you. Hello. I see you. You missed me? Okay. All right, good. Somebody did. That's all that matters. As long as there's one, right? So as you guys see here, let me move my phone. So as you see the title, right? You cannot serve two masters. And that kind of makes sense, but I'm going to really make it make sense. My goal is to really make it make sense. And we've heard that term before, whether it's through religious text. We've heard that term in, just your life. We know that it's very difficult to focus on two things at the same time. Matter of fact, it's actually impossible. If you think about your eyes, and you can do this while you're sitting there listening, I want you to look away from the screen. So whether you're looking at me or you're just listening, you don't need to look at me. But if you look away at the screen, I want you to look at something. Doesn't matter what it is, look at anything. And then you will realize, right, this is what awareness does. You will realize that you can only focus on one particular item, right? That's the way the eyes work. You only have the ability to focus on one thing. It's the same way that a camera works, okay? So whenever you focus on one thing, take a look at something around your room, focus on it, you will then realize that everything else around it is now peripheral. Even though you're looking at it, it's not in focus. It's the same thing when you are, you're looking at a large item. You're not necessarily focused on the entire item at once. The whole thing may just be peripheral, right? It may be out of focus. Not to the point where it's fuzzy, but when you actually focus, use your brain, and then actually focus on one item, you'll then realize you never were actually looking at all of it and focusing on all of it. You were really just looking at it in your peripheral. So we think that a lot of times our peripherals are off to the side. No, our peripherals are all over our eyes. So it's the same thing when it comes to our wellness journey, right? It's the same thing. We tend to not focus on one thing, the journey is in our peripherals, and things don't work well when we do that. So let me give you a quick story, and I like to put myself out there. I don't. Let me actually reverse. I don't like to put myself out there, but I do, because I know that a lot of us can relate, and it makes sense. So, as you all know, I'm currently. I hope you know. Maybe you don't know. Maybe you don't know. I'm currently doing a program that's called 75 Hard. I've talked about it, and it is a mental toughness slash fitness challenge, which requires me to do a lot of working out, and also some other tasks that I have to do throughout my day. Okay. Now, the reason that I wanted to go through that process originally was because my issue was one of my issues through my journey, and what I was working to do was staying consistent with my fitness. And I was consistent in a lot of other places, but when it comes to my actual fitness or my level of activity, I really struggled with being consistent. So I said, let me do this program because it's a challenge and I do really well with challenges. You challenge me to something, I focus on it, and anything that I focus on blossoms. So I said, let me do this challenge and then I'll focus on it. Well, I think today is day 30 or day 31. And you have to do basically 2 exercises a day. One of them has to be outside, and they don't have to be super intense or strenuous, but you got to do something active. So I struggled with getting about 6 weeks consistently in the gym or running, cardio, whatever, right? At about 4 to 6 weeks, that's really where I waned. And then I've never been past about 6 weeks. So if I was working out about 5 days a week, for 6 weeks, 6 times 5, right, brings us to 30. So on average, I was doing about 30 workouts in total. Going through this program, I've now gone over 60 workouts. 60, right? I was struggling when I got to about 30 over the course of 6 weeks. And at this point, I've already surpassed 60 different workouts. Why? Because I focused on it. I then said, this is the focus. I'm going to put 100% in it, right? So, of course, I knew it wasn't a weight loss challenge, and I knew that because of the type of workouts I was going to do, I was going to actually be putting on muscle. That was the goal. So, but I still, of course, being Steven, have to track data. And I was, of course, tracking my weight, and I had weight goals as well. So as I'm tracking this information, my weight is going down, down, down consistently. And I'm not doing anything in particular. At the time, I wasn't fasting. And I just was like, I'm just going to focus on getting my workouts in, eating the way that I specified that I was going to eat. And my weight was just trending down, right? So then I decided, well, my weight's trending down. The challenge is about to start. Let me throw in some juice fast, right? Let me go ahead and throw in some fasting. And of course, even with my knowledge, I'm still of the mindset, right? This is how deeply ingrained these things are, that, okay, you know what? Well, I can still do my workouts. I can do them consistently. I can do them well. And I can increase that weight loss because I'm going to do a couple of juice fasts, right? Makes sense to me. As I start doing that, I don't get on the scale. I'm just like, let me just focus on doing what I'm going to do. And then I got on the scale yesterday, and then I realized that my weight actually went up. I gained like 4 pounds. And I'm like, wait a minute. I immediately had this emotional response of panic. And I said, it took me about 10 seconds. And I said, Stephen, you know better. You knew this was going to happen, right? But I didn't think about it, right? And there's a lot of reasons that happens, but we're not necessarily going to go and get into the nitty gritty of why that happened. But hopefully, as we go through this process, you'll then start to understand why these things can happen, right? This is why, of course, when we're going through different processes, sometimes we want to focus on weight, other times we don't, right? But we have to focus on one item or one phase. And what I did is when I was focused on the program and the challenge, everything was just working. Everything was doing exactly what it's supposed to do. As soon as my focus began to wane and I started serving 2 masters, my weight started changing, right? It started going in the direction I didn't want it to go, right? Now, my focus through the challenge, of course, was not necessarily weight loss. It was to be consistent with working out and muscle production or rebuilding, which we're going to talk about here in a second. But as soon as I shifted and started to add in a little detox, right? Detoxification phase into that process, my body went haywire. It said, no, 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 no. What's happening here? You're doing too much. And if it can happen to me, it can happen to so many others. And I know this. And even knowing it, I still feel like, hey man, I could beat this. I could do this. Nope. Things didn't go the way that I planned. Right? So, what's up, Matthew? I'm glad you made it also, sir. Right? So that is the part of the inspiration for the story or this live. But I want to walk you through in somewhat of detail of these phases, right? And I want to talk about why you can't serve two masters. So as you guys know, as of recently, I've been upgraded, man. I think that you guys have noticed, but I've been leveling up. And something that I've been doing is making sure that I'm not just adding in just the speak, right? But I'm adding in visuals into this content that I create, because a lot of people learn differently. And if you don't see something, or if you're not focused on what's happening or the live or the video, right, your focus wanes and you may miss something. So then I said, you know what? I'm focusing on putting things together, documents, PDFs, things like that, so that way you guys can see. And then not only do you hear it, but then you also see it, which means we're now bringing in multiple different senses, which means you're going to retain more information. So as always, you can take notes if you would like, but I am going to put this document inside of the challenge, so that way you can download it and you have it for yourself. But but everything that I talk about is not going to be in the document in itself. So if there's something that I say that you're like, ooh, I like that, make sure you write it down. You remember way more. I forget the percentage, right? But it's like 60%, 56, something like that, of what you write down, more than just what you hear. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. Got my celery juice. Let me get some of the celery up, baby. Welcome to class. Thank you for joining me. All right, so let's make this a little bit larger so you guys can see. And also, I don't want you reading, skipping past things. I want you focused on what we focused on, right? So you cannot serve two masters. What does this mean? Serving two different masters will cause you not to be able to give 100% to them. I literally just gave you a real life example. There's a reason I gave that example, right? We see this in government espionage, right? I watch all kinds of different stuff, and I like documentaries, and I like military and anything related to history, which kind of involves government. I love that type of stuff, right? But so this is where this came from. But in government espionage, right, you have spies, and then, which is very normal, right? It's not fiction, it's real. Right. But then you also have what are called 00 agents. So 007, right? 00 agent, right? It's a real thing. And what a 00 agent is basically it's a spy that may work for, let's say, Russia, but then also they work for the United States. Okay. So they're serving two masters, and the other country doesn't know that they're a spy for the other. Right. In the end, what typically happens in this situation, if they don't get out, they end up betraying both the countries by serving them simultaneously. This is something that you'll see all the time with these type of agents, right? They'll end up betraying both countries. So they're working for the United States, but then they're also selling secrets, right? Classified documents, top secret documents to the other country. But also at the same time, they're doing the same thing for, let's say, Russia, and they're selling secrets to the United States. They're serving two masters, right, simultaneously. So even though they've done good deeds, we'll call them, they were doing good for their country, right? Even though those have been done, when one of them finds out that they are playing for the other side, all those good deeds go out the window. And then the cost of the treason in this situation is certain death. Now, obviously, when we're talking about our wellness, certain death is not necessarily what what the cost is, right? But in the scenario or the example I just gave you, the cost of that was my weight increasing, right? Now, of course, I understand why my weight was increasing, but that does not change the emotional hit that I took when I got on the scale, right? It did not change the level of demotivation I felt, especially because I've never been as committed and consistent with my physical activity, and I was immediately demotivated. There's a cost associated with serving two masters at the same time, right? So the question is, which master are you serving? Let's talk about it, right? So in my experience in myself, right, as I just gave you an example, and also in working with others, a common pitfall I've seen is many of us are on a journey, yet we have no defined destination. Now, you will have this document, but I want you to write that down. Many of us are on a journey, yet we have no defined destination. That's a problem. And we sometimes think that, oh, well, my destination or my goal is I want to lose 100 pounds. I promise you that's not your destination, because you're going to lose 100 pounds. You're going to be like, okay, what's next? Right? That's not the destination. The wellness wheel will then consume us, right? Going back and forth between different protocols. Every time we find new information that resonates with us, we need to build discipline, right? And begin to finish things before we move to the next phase. We will hear new information, or we will hear, oh, there's a detox protocol, or there's a parasite cleanse, or there's this, or there's that, right? There's all these different things out there when we start digging into wellness, and so many things resonate, and we find ourselves jumping from thing to thing to thing to thing, and we're not actively finishing or completing the phase before we are then moving into the next one. This is a problem, right? Hold on one moment, you guys. I had a little bit of a... Give me 1 second. Got a little technical difficulty here. Okay. All right. Can you guys can you just confirm that you can hear me and see me? My internet did something funky. Just give me a thumbs up, or let me know that we're back. Facts, jumping from thing to thing. Okay. All right, cool. Thank you, Matthew. I appreciate it. My man is always on point. Yes, I do got that celery on deck, right? Okay. Let me get back in the zone, right? So we will then, as someone else just stated, we will then jump from thing to thing to thing before we actively complete or finish off one of these phases, right? Where our focus starts to wane. There's a video that I put out. You should watch it if you haven't seen it, about being bored, right? It's in the group. It's about being bored on your wellness journey. And this is what happens as we go through these phases, right? We start getting into the groove, and we start saying, okay, well, I'm getting bored, right? I'm tired of detoxing. I want to do something different, right? Or I'm tired of doing this. I want to go a different route, right? We get bored in that process. And it's not boredom as in like it's not working, but what it really is is we start to then settle into these new habits. We start to settle into the process, and it feels like boredom, right? When we think about emotionally where we stand, a lot of people, particularly people that have dealt with obesity or different types of childhood traumas that have not been resolved, right? We have a addiction to chaos. And I know that sounds crazy because you're probably thinking, I'm not addicted to chaos. If you go on your Instagram right now and you see something negative, you're probably going to watch it, right? Now, I'm not saying that it's necessarily violent, but if you see something negative, you're probably going to watch it. A lot of times, we will then dig into or we will go into like negative things, but yet we skim over the positive. This is why if you have something that goes viral, a lot of times the things that go viral are things that are negative. If something came out about Usher and it was like, oh, Usher and Alicia Keys after the Super Bowl hooked up, it's going to go viral, right? But if someone came out and said, oh, yeah, after the Super Bowl, Usher gave me $1,000 and gave me a ride home because he saw I needed help, no one's going to say a word. It's not going to spread. Why? Because a lot of us dealing with trauma across the world, we are addicted to chaos, right? So we get addicted to wanting to do different things. We get addicted to jumping around. And when we are in a groove or we find a groove, we get bored. We find this happening in a lot of relationships, right? We become addicted to traumatic relationships or traumas that we learned through our childhood. And then we will then take those traumas and we will look for them in other people. And it sounds crazy because that's your adult brain thinking, right? Your logical brain, right? But a lot of the times the traumas are coming from childhood or middle age, right? Or teenage where something happened. And then we don't realize that now that trauma has rewired us. And then now we think that trauma or abuse is actually love, right? You ever seen a relationship with somebody and you're like, girl, what are you doing? This dude is toxic. And she's like, but I love him. It's trauma, right? We see this all the time. Whole different topic. We're not going to get into that, but something led me there, right? But we find ourselves wanting something new all the time. Healthy relationships tend to be boring for some people, right? That comes from unhealed trauma. That comes from wounds. It's the same thing on our wellness journey. We're so used to jumping from Jenny Craig to Bally's and jumping to the next diet pill, jumping to Lipozene and jumping to Ollie and jumping to all these different things, but we never truly give them a chance to work. Stop being bored. Stay focused, stay locked in. When it feels boring, when it feels like it's not working, when it feels like things just aren't going well or whatever, that's when you need to focus even more because they are working. That means you're building the habit. That means that means now things are coming into homeostasis, which if you come from a traumatic background, that's going to feel weird. Level ground will feel weird when you're used to chaos. So which master are you serving, right? So let's talk about the phases of the journey to wellness. I've kind of touched on them a little bit here and there, right? But let's talk more about what those phases are and what they may look like. All right. So, number one, right? Detoxification. Don't be going down looking. Detoxification. The process of removing toxic substances from the body. It's a very basic definition of detoxification. Now, of course, you can talk about detoxification when you're detoxing your clothes, right? It's the same thing, right? When you wash your clothes, it's a form or process of detoxification. But when we're talking about our wellness journey, right, this is the definition that we're going to use, which is the process of removing toxic substances from the body, right? Now, when we are going through the process of detoxification, the focus, right, there's that word again, will be on the actual removal of harmful toxins and substances within the body. This can also be the removal of toxic friends, family, or work associates that actively cause us harm inside of the boundaries that we have set for our lives. Now, don't let me get ahead of myself here, but we're not talking about boundaries tonight, but that's a whole video in and of itself. Okay. But anytime that something is getting inside of our boundaries that we don't want there, they are going to be toxic. If you have boundaries inside of your body, right, or on outside of your body, it's called the skin. It's the largest organ on the body. When you have bacteria get inside of the body and then it gets inside or it passes a boundary that it should not pass, you get sick. It can be a dis-ease, right? When I was young, I got gastritis, and something that I'm actually still I won't say dealing with, but something that I'm exploring, right? Of how I got it and are there lasting effects from it. But when I went to the doctor, my mom was like, well, what's gastritis? And the doctor said it's bacteria. And he said somehow bacteria has gotten inside of the blood and it has gotten into the gut, and this is what happens. And it literally made me sick. It's the sickest that I've been in my entire life. I couldn't eat solid food for it was over 7 days. I was literally eating pudding and Jello and drinking Gatorade for 7 days. I was on antibiotics. I was sick. But a bacteria got inside of my boundaries and it made me sick. So imagine when you have something that gets inside of your boundaries, whether it is a bacteria or a virus or a person that gets inside of your boundaries, they are going to make you sick, which means we need to go through a process of detoxification to remove that substance or that person or these people in our lives so then we can no longer be sick. Right? But then not only did I have to go through a process of detoxification, right, which is going to be the antibiotics, which is going to be not eating solid food, I then had to ensure that I was on probiotics, right? I had to rebuild because antibiotics break down your gut. They absolutely destroy your gut. So then I had to go on probiotics, right, to rebuild. You're going to get just stay with me here, right? So it's the same thing. When we're going through the process of detoxification, we need to focus on that phase, which is detox. The JR72, the process that we're in right now, is a process of detoxification. One of the things that I've seen, and I've talked to people, you guys schedule calls and we have conversation, they're like, oh, I started adding in some working out, or I started adding in this, and I started adding in that, and now I'm struggling, or, they were doing well, and then now, right, they're like, oh, Steve, I need help, I fell off, and I'm like, okay, well, tell me what happened, right? What's going on? Their focus waned. They started adding in other things, or other things came about that caused them to shift their gaze, or their focus started to shift, and now they're no longer focused on detox, and now they're split. If you try to split your focus, you're going to go cross-eyed. That means nothing's going to be in focus. You go cross-eyed, nothing's in focus, which means everything now suffers. You cannot serve two masters at the same time. Right? What does detox look like? Detox may look like drinking herbal teas that are focused around stimulating the detox organs and detoxification pathways in the body, right? As you will see, some of these things kind of overlap just a little bit, and that's okay. That's called peripheral, right? You'll see that there is some of the rebuilding and there is some of the healing that is in detoxification. And when you are going through rebuilding or you're going through healing, you may overlap with some of the detox or some of the rebuilding. It's called peripheral, right? But your focus has to be on one phase. Don't lose me here, right? Right? The second one, what is detox? What may detox look like? It may look like focusing on foods that are antioxidant rich, right? Things like leafy greens, things like your berries, your citrus, and cruciferous vegetables, right? The foods that you're eating should be focused on things that are going to support the detox of the body, right? So when you're going through refeeding, and there's a whole different lesson, so I don't want to get into this, I want to save this, but when you're going through refeed, the refeed you should be focusing on during detox, you should be focusing on foods that are going to continue the detoxification process. One of the problems or one of the issues that people have with their refeeding is that they're not, if you're doing a R72 style fasting or a 5-2 style fasting and you're still within your process, you should be focusing on foods that are going to assist even when you're eating in the detoxification process. And a lot of times what will happen is that we will then find that our focus wanes during refeed and we start focusing on foods that are actually needed during the rebuilding process, right? We have to focus on things that are in front of us, right? We have to focus on the phase that we're in, not just the juicing, right? But it's also going to be the eating, right? Our activity, all of these things should be in alignment with detoxification if we are focused on a detox phase. If you find yourself struggling, you may be serving two masters, right? Your activity focuses on things that may assist in detoxification. This is going to be things like sweating, right? Doing hot baths, add some Epsom salt. Things are going to help pull toxins out of the body, right? You're going to be doing things like sunbathing. When you go out in the sun, and I know it's wintertime right now, but in some areas it's starting to warm up a little bit. You don't need to be hot, but if the sun is out, it can detox you, right? Saunas, things that are going to make you sweat to help pull toxins out of the body, right? And then long, brisk walks, something that's going to get your heart rate up. Something is going to allow you to sweat. These are going to assist in the detox process. Those are the type of physical activity items that you want to be doing when you're focused on detox. Y'all feeling this? What is getting inside my boundaries that is making me sick? You better write that down. I like that. This is so good. I love you. And I don't like you for real, for real. Calling you out. Right? Okay. All right. Let's move to the next one. Right? So healing. So when you're going through the process of healing, this process, right? I'm sorry. So when you're going through the process of healing, the process of making or becoming sound or healthy again, that's what healing is. The process of making or becoming sound or healthy again. Now, if we look at the definition or we look at the word health or healthy literally means in good health, right? So funny. Me and Chris did a video and I talked about that, but it literally means in good health, right? But what does that mean? Right? What does in good health mean? When you talk about healthy or something that is in good health and you talk about the body, it means an organ system that literally has the ability to detox at a high level. So if the organ has an ability to detox at a high level, that would mean it would be considered healthy. And in order for us to get an organ or an organ system to be healthy, we need to detox it first, right? Which means we need to go through a process of detoxification in order for us to start healing that organ. There's an order to this. They're already in order. I put them in order for you, right? Detox at the ground level. You focus on detoxing first, then you focus on healing, and then you focus on rebuilding. But there's an overlap to each of them. Once again, that's the peripheral. So when we are going through the process of healing, this can get deep. And then as each one of these, right, the detoxification, the healing, or the rebuilding, not only are these, or could you look at these on a physical level, right, but each one of these also you can look at on a mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional level as well. So don't take this information. I'm talking primarily about the physical, but all of this information is also can also be used on your mental, emotional, and spiritual health as well. So when we talk about the journey, it's not just making it to a certain weight. When you're talking about your wellness journey, we're talking about a lifelong journey. The journey is never over. Because as soon as you think you got something, I guarantee you, God, the universe is going to give you something else. It's going to show you something else you need to work on. I've been on this path for 7 years. And every single time I think I get to a certain point, I'm like, wow, I uncover something new and it's something new to work on. It's never over. But that's the best part. You're always growing, right? The moment you start growing is when death occurs, right? So we don't want to do that. So it's a process. It's going to take a long time. And when you're healing, the results are going to be slow. That doesn't mean you're not going to make progress, but the progress is slow. And most of the time, we don't recognize the progress for a while. So when you're talking about healing the body or emotional healing, this takes time. It takes focus. And depending on, of course, what you're working on, sometimes you have to switch from one phase to the next. Sometimes you get to a point where in detox, you're detoxing too heavily, right? And now you have to take a break from detox. If you were doing some dry fasting, it's going to detox you incredibly strong. And you say, I'm detoxing too hard. I can't get out of bed. I'm so weak. I feel like I'm going to throw up. I'm so dizzy. You're detoxing too hard. You got to pull it back, right? It's the same way when you're talking about your healing. As you go through these processes, they take a long time. And sometimes you have to switch. But it's not about not switching, right? So when I talk about your focus waning, it's really about making sure that you are going through the process and you are finishing whatever that process, program, whatever it is that you're doing, finish it, complete it. Don't forget or lose that information and then move to the next phase intentionally. Don't let your your gaze shift, right? Or going into your peripheral, intentionally refocus on something else. That's the difference. So it's okay to move from one thing to the next if you feel like you have completed or you have reached a milestone in that process, but then don't just let your gaze just move or shift, intentionally refocus. So healing may look like, as you go through this process, focusing on getting 7 hours of sleep every night, right? Deep sleep. The body does almost all of its true healing overnight, right? During the resting and forced fasting cycles. So if you're going through healing, now obviously this is kind of where this overlap comes, because when you're going through detox, you want to make sure that you're getting a nice amount of rest. When you're going through detox, you actually may want to get more. There may be times where you're sleeping 10 to 12 hours a night because you're detoxing, right? But when we're talking about healing, we want to make sure that we're getting 7, 8 hours of sleep. As you continue to heal, you may find that you only need 6 to 7 hours of sleep. You don't need 8 hours, right? You really need more sleep when you are either really, whether you're rebuilding, right, or you're detoxing. When you are in a state of homeostasis or you're in a state of kind of healing, then you will find that 6 to 7 hours is actually pretty adequate. Okay. Focusing on foods like healthy fats, right? Fruits, foods high in phytonutrients like mangoes and melons, bok choy and Swiss chard, right? You may also focus on an anti-inflammatory diet, right? These things are the way that you eat during your healing process. These things are going to help you with the organs in the body healing itself. Okay. Stress management, right? Learning and learning emotional awareness, deep breathing and meditation, right? Focusing on calming the vagus nerve, right? On tapping, right? On the vagus nerve, right? There's different exercises you can do. These things assist in the healing process. I think that a lot of times we underestimate the power of our breath, right? And stress management. But when we start to learn these exercises and we start to actually utilize some of these tools, you will find that your body starts really to get in line. It really starts focusing and doing the things that you want to do, which in this process, right, we're talking about healing. Don't be afraid of meditation. Don't be afraid of deep breathing. They're not new age. They've been around forever. And I promise you they work. Try them. Start doing them consistently. Wake up in the morning. I usually say you wake up in the morning, the first thing you do is use the bathroom, go get your lemon juice and celery water, or celery water and lemon water and celery juice, right? Which is still good. But within that time frame, find 5 minutes to wake up and then give yourself a second, right? Lay in the bed, breathe in through the nose, right? Deep breath into the belly. breathe out through the mouth slowly. Do that 2 or 3 times tomorrow, right? And then you may find that, number one, you start to wake up and you become more alert more fast. You may find that you don't need coffee first thing in the morning because your body is now more alert, right? We all the time we wake up and we just start going, and it's like, well, we never gave our body a chance to wake up. And a lot of times when we're waking up, we're still in the process of removing toxins from the body. We're still in the process of taking out the trash that the body has been detoxing all night. That's a whole nother conversation, right? But we're not in when it comes to our circadian rhythm, usually because of the life that we live in modern society, we're not ready to start doing things. That really doesn't happen until about 12 o'clock. 12 o'clock, the body's like, okay, I'm up. Let's get stuff done, right? But when you wake up 7, 8 o'clock, you're not usually ready to go. It's not that you're weird. It's not that you're not a morning person. Your body literally is not ready. So deep breathing helps you get ready, right? Rebuilding, right? The final stage of this process, or the final phase. Now, in order to rebuild, the definition means you to build something again after it has been damaged or destroyed. Read that. Write that. You don't have to write down, right? But the word again is important. Build something again after it has been damaged or destroyed, right? What that means is there had to have been something there before or first in order for us to then rebuild. If I go and tear down a building, or if I say, hey, I want to rebuild a building. Okay, great. What do you want to rebuild? Well, I bought this plot of land. There's nothing on it but grass. Well, you can't rebuild that. You have to build something first, right? So in order for us to rebuild, we have to go through the process of what? Detoxification. We have to go through the process of tearing things down or removing toxins from the body in order for us to then rebuild. So we have to go through this cycle. A lot of times, once again, as I kind of touched on earlier, we are focused unintentionally on rebuilding, and we think that we're detoxing, but really our focus or our actions are more aligned with rebuilding. And that's literally what I was doing for that, like, I don't know, it was about a week and a half or so. It's like, oh, I'm focusing on rebuilding, but then I'm trying to jump into detox, and I'm like, wait, my body's like, this doesn't work. It's going out of whack. Why is it doing that? Because when you're detoxing, you are actively removing things from the system, okay? When you're going through rebuilding, the body is actively holding onto things and working to rebuild something that was torn down, okay? So when you're trying to do them together, imagine trying to build you're playing Jenga, and you are trying to put the thing together so that when you guys can start the game, but someone just keeps poking out the Jenga cubes, and then you're having to add them in every time, and they keep poking them out, and it's like, listen, stop. I'm trying to build this so we can play, and you keep poking it out. You're detoxing the Jenga cube, right? But it's like, no, I'm trying to rebuild it because we want to play again. It doesn't work. Does that make sense? It doesn't work. We have to focus on one phase at a time, okay? So when you are going through the process of rebuilding, the focus will be on rebuilding what has been broken down specifically and where you are in the journey. Now, of course, these all can go much deeper. I can probably talk about each one of these in themselves for an hour, right? But when you talk about rebuilding, you really need to talk about, what are we rebuilding, right? So that's the question. When you get to rebuilding, it's what are we rebuilding? If you are focused on, I'm sick and I'm detoxing because I'm sick, right? You're going to go through the phase of healing, right? So you're going to be focusing on eating certain foods that are going to be focusing on your healing. And then you're going to be focused on rebuilding those organ systems. And there's going to be things that you're going to do focused around that based upon what you're rebuilding. If you're focused on weight loss, which I'm going to focus on that because that's where most of us are, right? And let's be honest, right? We're focusing on weight loss. So if you are focused on weight loss, then what are we breaking down? We're breaking down toxins, we're breaking down fat, and then we need to rebuild. If we're going to be rebuilding, what are we going to be rebuilding with? We want to do something to rebuild with muscle, right? If we're breaking down fat, we want to rebuild with muscle. So this is where we get that word toning from, right? Which toning is really literally the breaking down of fat, and then it is the rebuilding of muscle. That's exactly what toning is. But they don't work well together. They work best when done separately. Okay. And then this is why so many times, and I guarantee you, every single one of us has done this in our lives that has been on any kind of weight loss journey, right? And it's the whole fitness industry is flawed because of this. And this is why America, we have the biggest fitness industry, but yet we also have the biggest obese population, is because fundamentally we're teaching it wrong. We're teaching change your diet, focus on things that are going to decrease calories, which we're really talking about detoxing, but then also at the same time, make sure that you're going to the gym, make sure that you're eating enough protein, make sure that you're eating all these, make sure you're getting enough calories so then you can build that dump truck. It's like, wait a minute. You're poking out the Jenga cubes while we're trying to rebuild. It doesn't work. And then what happens is that you don't see results, and then your focus wanes, and then you quit, right? It's the same song and dance. It's the wellness wheel. It's the same song and dance over and over and over and over. We've all been through it because we are focused on doing too many things. We are focused unintentionally on serving two masters. It doesn't work. Okay. So when you're rebuilding, this may look like focusing on drinking herbal teas that help with the rebuilding of lean mass, right? In the body, like alfalfa. You can eat alfalfa sprouts. You can do alfalfa tea, right? This is an herbal tea that can help you rebuild. And there's other ones as well. This is the first one that came to my mind, right? I didn't have a lot of time to write this because I had to go do my workouts, right? But I put this together in 30 minutes. I hope y'all appreciate that. Okay, right? This whole thing, 30 minutes, right? Off the top of the dome, right? Focusing on a diet, foods high in amino acids or proteins, right? Now, they're essentially the same thing, right? And this is something, if you never heard me talk about this, but I'm going to give you the sauce right here. When people or the world is saying that you need to eat more protein, right? What they're really saying is you need to have more amino acids in your body, okay? When protein is intaken, the body cannot use protein. Let me say that again. The body cannot use protein. What it does is it breaks down proteins and it breaks them down into amino acids. When it breaks down the proteins into amino acids, it places them in what's called the amino acid pool. The amino acid pool is an area in the body in which it stores all of the amino acids and it pools them for about 3 days. So you have a running amino acid pool of about 3 days, okay? So if you had a lot of, L-arginine, right, which is an amino acid on Monday, right? Today's Wednesday, but you don't have any for the next 2 days, you still have L-arginine in the amino acid pool, okay? What happens is that when you get all the essential amino acids or you get the essentials and the non-essentials, the body then takes those and it goes through a process to then build protein strands, right? And this is the protein the body can utilize. The protein that's in your body that's being used is not the same thing as the protein that you are getting from meat or tempeh or your tofu or your out of your beans. They're not the same. Same word, but they're chemically different. So don't confuse those, right? So what we're really talking about is getting foods into your body that are high in amino acids, okay? Now, in order for you to do that, you can do two different things. Depending on how you're eating, you can focus on eating meat if you desire to do that, right? I don't eat meat. So my focus then has to be on getting foods that are high in amino acids, and I have to eat a lot of variety. So that's kind of a pitfall for a lot of people that don't eat meat. If you eat meat, a lot of your meats are already fully structured with their proteins or your amino acids. Why? Because you're eating the animal that has already eaten the food and their body's already synthesized it. So now they have complete structures. So when you eat it, of course, you have complete structures, right? But it's a secondary type of protein, right? So that what that means is it's not as strong as if you got it directly from your fruits and vegetables, things of that nature. So while yes, If you're getting amino acids from your fruits and vegetables, it may take a little bit longer to build them because your body has to then put them together, right? But when it does put them together, they're stronger. This is why you have a lot of people that are going to the gym, and then as soon as they stop going to the gym, they stop eating 200 grams of protein a day, they stop taking all the protein shakes, they start to deflate. They start to lose muscle mass very quickly. Why? Because the muscle was built on a secondary type of protein. So you really want to focus on amino acids, right? If you're going to be focusing during the rebuilding phase. All right, what's the second part? Focusing on, I already did that. Focusing on diet, high amino acids, right? Then the third part, testing your emotional resilience in tough situations or actively in the gym lifting weights and not cardiovascular health focused, right? So when we're talking about rebuilding, I added that first part in there because when we're talking about rebuilding, it's not just about physical, right? But that just came to my brain. And while, yes, it didn't fit, something told me to add it. Because when we're talking about like rebuilding our emotions after we go through a detox, which means we'll remove. So when we talk about emotions, let me give you an example of what this looks like. If you're detoxing and you're going through an emotional detox, you're removing, right? This person's toxic. This person doesn't serve me. This person doesn't support me. I'm removing people from my life, right? Now I'm going through healing, right? I'm going through the process of now finding my reparenting. I'm going through the process of doing shadow work, or I'm going through the process of making amends to people that may have harmed in the past, right? Emotionally. There's so much different emotional work that you do, raising your awareness, increasing your emotional intelligence. All of that is healing, right? And then in the rebuilding phase of emotions, you then have to then put that stuff to the test. People often say, and I really don't like this phrase, but people often say, I'm protecting my peace, right? I'm doing this to protect my peace. Well, are you protecting your peace or are you practicing avoidance? Because there's a difference, right? If you truly were peaceful, you can then walk or be in unpeaceful situations and you can still have or carry your peace. Matter of fact, someone that's truly peaceful will bring peace to an unpeaceful or chaotic situation, right? So we have to be careful what we're saying and what we listen to in the world with social media, because so much of it is wrong. So many people are out there thinking they're protecting their peace, but what they're actually doing is they're practicing avoidance, and they never go through the process of healing. What they're actually doing is in their very beginning stage, which is detox, but then they don't go through healing. So then they feel like, okay, well, I've been single for 10 years, or I've been single for 4 years, and I think that I'm good now. But then they get around somebody or they start dating somebody who starts to trigger them, and then now they don't know what to do. Like, it's like, well, no, if you went through the healing process, then you would be able to understand how to navigate the situation. And you may not have gotten to the situation in the first place, but you were protecting your peace all this time, right? Practicing avoidance. You never actually went through healing. There's phases to this: mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, right? When you're talking about physical and you're talking about rebuilding and we're talking about activity, you don't want to be in the gym doing a lot of cardiovascular work, right? Cardiovascular work, right? We shorten that and we say cardio. What is the cardiovascular system? The cardiovascular system primarily made up of your lungs, right? When you're doing cardio, what are you doing? You're working your lungs. You're working cardiovascular health, right? It's not really the best for rebuilding. Now, granted, if you have a cardiovascular issue, if you were healing in the cardiovascular system, then absolutely cardio was great. But most of us are not necessarily in that process, right? When we're talking about the body and we're talking about going through detoxing of the body, then healing the body, and then rebuilding, what we're looking to do is actually build lean skeletal mass, which is muscle, right? So when you're doing that, and this for my ladies, for my girlies, right? When you're doing that, you need to lift weights, right? There's nothing wrong with, doing cardio and things of that nature. But ladies, I'm telling you right now, if you want to get the body that you want to get to, right? Or if you understand, right? Let's talk. We talked about this. If you understand where you're going, right? Many of us are on a journey, yet we have no defined destination. If you understand what your defined destination is, and you say, well, listen, in 5 years, this is where I want to go, this is where I want to be, this is what I want to look like, then you will then start doing things physically when you're in rebuilding that will get you or work on that destination. If you want to be more toned and more in shape, then in that process and rebuilding, cardio is not what you want to do, right? That would be more along the lines of the detox, right? Once again, we want to focus on sweating, things of that nature. Cardio does what? Makes you sweat, right? If really you want to be focusing on now toning and you're rebuilding, you need to lift weights. So all of this stuff works together. And far too often what happens is that we are focused on one thing and it's the wrong thing, right? Or we are focused on two things and then we find ourselves serving two different masters. So I hope that this has been beneficial. I hope that this made sense. There's going to be another lesson that I do probably next week, right at the end of the program. We're going to talk about refeeding a little more deeply, because depending on what your goals are, and depending on what where you want to go, we need to know what the next steps are, right? If you're still in the process, I'm focused on losing weight, keep focusing on detox, right? There are going to be phases where you jump into rebuilding, right? Where you're focusing on eating certain things that are rebuilding the system, but that's a different conversation specifically around refeeding, right? But you're going to go through phases, and some of these overlap. That's okay. They're peripheral. But what is the focus, right? What is the destination? Where are you trying to go? I want to give you all a little bit of homework. Okay. I do that sometimes. I was going to go to school to be a teacher. Should have been, right? Literally, it's what I do. I love this. Like, you guys have no idea. I love this. And I really pray for myself, and you pray for me too, that one day that I will be able to continue to teach at a high level to the point where teaching in some way allows me the freedom financially, physically, spiritually to do that 100% of the time, all the time. That's my goal. I just want to help. Right? But here's your homework. I want you to write down or to begin to contemplate or think about this quote in this under which master are you serving? Many of us are on a journey, yet we have no defined destination. This is really about taking that why and going a little bit deeper, right? What is the defined destination? I was going to say destination and definition. Can't talk today, right? What is the defined destination? Where do you want to go? What is the timeline, right? Visualize it and be realistic. Understand that wherever you're trying to go, you're not going to get there in a year. You're not going to get there. It's not going to be 2 years. Even if I was 100% on point and my fasting was great, I never regained weight, all that stuff, yada, yada, yada. I may be where I wanted to be physically, but I would have never learned the skills when it comes to the mindset or the mentality, right? Or those things that I teach, or emotions. I would have never learned them. I needed to go through that phase of emotional distress to then even begin to delve into that process. So even if I then learned all of that, it still would be taking me the time that it's taking me now, right? And then when you start digging into your emotions, you have some harmful stuff come up, some hurtful things, some old stuff come up. You're detoxing, right? You're going to want to cope, cause you to gain weight, especially if you don't have proper coping skills, right? So there's always this push and pull. Your weight is always going to fluctuate. It's never going to be stagnant, right? And at one point in time, you will reach a place where you are set. it's not going to be as fast as you may think. The hard truth, right? So, what does that place look like for you, right? What does it look like when you get there? What is the defined destination? What does it look like? How do you look? How do you feel? What are you doing for work, right? What does your relationship look like, right? What does this look like? It's a little bit of a mix of the heaven and hell and the why. What does your defined destination look like? And then put a time frame on it. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be set on it, but give yourself a time frame. When you then start to time bound things, they make them more real, right? When you put a time on something, it becomes a goal and it's more real. When you don't put a time on it, it's now just a dream. Now, I didn't make that up. I heard that from somewhere. I think it was Steve Harvey, but Cat Williams said, don't give Steve Harvey no credit. So we ain't giving Steve Harvey no credit. Shady. That game's a great illustration. Jenga. You like that? That's on top of the dome, baby. Hey, man, listen, my life, man, I've been through life, right? My whole thing, right? The thing that makes Stephen Michael special, if someone says, Stephen, what makes you special? Is that I have, because of my experiences and because of what I'm learning and because of what I study, I have the ability to make dots connect when it comes to like life and like wellness. It's like I can take these things and mold them together and then make things make sense, right? I have the ability to learn high level information and then really bring them down to like a place where we can all understand. Because I really dislike when someone just constantly talks over me, right? And let's say it's someone who's really smart, like smarter than me. And it's just like, bro, I just don't understand. It's really frustrating. And it makes me not want to listen to them. Even though they have all this information, bro, break it down. And you have a lot of people that can't do that, right? It's one of my superpowers. So, good info on rebuilding and toning. Yeah. Weight loss first, then muscle production. That is toning. That's how you do it. Lose fat, then build muscle. Lose fat, then build muscle, right? It's a push and pull. You can focus on weight loss for a year, 2 years, and then focus on the gym, right? Or you can kind of go back and forth, right? Depends on you. How focused can you be? This is really deep, and I agree about social media. Yeah. Lifting weights now, my goals are met. Okay, all right, I like that, right? You hit that weight goal and you start lifting. Practicing avoidance but not healing. Next time you see somebody say, I'm protecting my peace, let that perk your ear up. Because if you were really protecting your peace, you would put yourself in a situation that requires you to test your resilience, right? If you go to school and you're learning, what do? They give you quizzes. You may get a pop quiz. You get a test. Why? They're testing to see if you have retained and have an understanding of the information. Life is going to test you. But if you're constantly practicing avoidance, if you're constantly saying, oh, I'm just not going to go, I'm not going to do this, you're never practicing or testing your resilience. You never know if you actually learned it or not. That's deep, right? This is also why we can't be afraid to be around foods when we're fasting, because that is your test. That is you practicing your resilience. Did you actually learn that chocolate cake was bad, right? Did what Steven said really make sense? And you said, I legitimately don't want this because I know this is actually detrimental to you? Or are you just simply practicing avoidance in that scenario? You have to test yourself. We can't always practice avoidance. Sometimes avoidance is good, though, especially when we're weak. Thanks, Pastor Mike. You always bring the word. Missed you. I love you guys. Somehow I'm just understanding the steps. Detox, heat, and then build back. Thank you for breaking it down. You're welcome. A lot of people don't know this, so don't feel bad. Do not feel bad. All right, listen, I'll let you guys go. I got some food in the crock pot. It's been down there since 5 o'clock. Don't ask me for a recipe because y'all know I cook and I season with my heart. I don't know if it's gonna be good. I was like, I'm gonna make a mushroom, potato, vegetables soup. I didn't taste it. I put the seasonings in. We'll see if it works. It's gonna work out, man. I'm intuitive. I said, man, put this little dab of that, little dip of that, boom, 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 right? It'll be good. Anyway, I really appreciate you all. Thank you very much for being here. You gotta make them raps again. Next month, I'm going all raw for March. So I'll be making a lot of raps. You can come get some. If y'all in the area, you can come get some. Come through. I'll make you a rap. Open invitation. All right, listen, I love you all. Thank you very much for being here. I do appreciate it. I know it was a little bit later, but I needed a little time to put this together. I will drop this document inside of the group right after this call. Thank you very much once again. You guys have a great rest of your evening. Great job on fasting if you're still fasting. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.